Start with our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Hello, everybody. I missed you last week. We had, as I said in my email, we had a really great time at the wedding from the Denver family, and it was just great being with people like who know you. I felt like Cheers, a place where everyone knows your name, and because that's one of the strange things about being new is that people don't really know your past. They don't know your relatives. They don't know all these different things. So it was very nice. And it was also nice seeing people who spend a lot of time in Israel, people who live here, but who, because we don't have Sundays to visit, since Sunday's a regular work day, school day, it's hard to connect. And even though Israel is a small country, there's a lot of traffic. It takes a lot of time to get to places. So we were very grateful for the family who celebrated the simcha to have a simcha because it felt like they gave us all a party, which was very, very nice of them to do that. Okay, hold on one second. Let me just admit some people here. Admit all. Okay. Welcome to Sefer Shemot, what's called the Book of Exodus. Such a shame that that's what it's called, because the word Shemot means names. It doesn't mean Exodus. It's obviously called Exodus because in the Latin, Greek translation of all this, that is the main event that happens, which is the Exodus from Egypt. However, the truth is that's not actually the main point of the book of Exodus, because there are several parshas around the Exodus from Egypt. But the truth is that most of the rest of the Sefer of Shemot is about the building of the Mishkan. So that's interesting that kind of escapes most people's attention, but it really is about that. However, the Shemot, which means names, and we're going to delve into this in hopefully not necessarily in a way that is brand new to everybody, but hopefully in a way that is a reminder to us, because the truth is this Sefer, this book of Shemot is supposed to be a reminder and a wake-up call to each and every one of us to our mission in our life. So there are other names for the book of Shemot, which is also called Sefer Geula, which means the book of redemption. So the book of redemption, which goes beyond the explanation of the Exodus. Exodus from Egypt is just really means to leave Egypt. Redemption really focuses on a complete process. The truth is, though, as we said, the book of Shemot doesn't end with going into the land of Israel. It ends with the putting up of the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary, and having the divine presence rest on it and rest amongst the Jewish people. That's actually considered redemption. The return of the divine presence on the Jewish people is really the definition of redemption. It is the place where we are finally going to. That's where we're trying to get to. And we have two places where that happens in Shemot, in the Sefer of Exodus. I'm not going to call it names because it sounds kind of funny, but in the book of Exodus, one is when the Jewish people get to Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, to receive the Ten Commandments. And as we know, the divine presence certainly comes down and is over the Jewish people, and the Jewish people are in direct connection and experiencing of God's reality and the Shekhinah, the divine presence. And then the Mishkan, from the word Shekhinah, is about how to take that presence of the divine that was experienced at Mount Sinai and carry that forward into the future, which will then take a permanent form once they get into the land of Israel and finally build the Beit HaMikdash when the temple is built by King Solomon. So all of that is called redemption. The redemptive process is when the Shekhinah comes to the Jewish people. Until that time, and we are in the process and we are on the road to that, we have the concept that's called Mitzrayim. We have the concept that is called Egypt. And very interestingly, according to the Kabbalists, this is a very interesting definition of each of our own personal lives. It says everybody, everyone, not just the generation then, everyone has come into this world in order to get themselves out of Mitzrayim. That we come into this world and we are in Mitzrayim, and our life goal is to get ourselves out. Obviously, with the help of Hashem, who has equipped us with our Mitzrayim, our own personal Mitzrayim, our challenges, our instincts, our negative qualities. So, unlike some beliefs, which are that people come into this world completely good, and it's only things that happen to them later that may give them challenges and problems and that they have to solve them. We don't believe that. And we don't believe that there's original sin, that people come in some way that is completely defective, that they have to be saved from. What we come in with is that Hashem has sent each of us into a journey of Mitzrayim and being in Mitzrayim, figuring out what that Mitzrayim is from the circumstances of our own personal lives, and has also equipped us with what we need in order to get out of Mitzrayim, in order to get out of that place, to be able to meet our challenges, overcome our weaknesses, deal with our negative qualities, and to be able to shine brightly. That our good qualities are also in there. So we know this is the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, the good and the evil inclination that we were born, and we have both. So our goal, which I happen to, I like things that feel tangible. I like the idea of thinking that my life goal is to get out of Mitzrayim, as opposed to thinking of this Yetzer Hara evil monster that's trying to do me in. If I am in a constant process of leaving greater and greater levels of Mitzrayim to reach a more and more refined levels of redemption, I don't know, somehow that feels a little bit more inspiring to me rather than the other. So that's what we're here to do, is to leave Mitzrayim. How do we do that? The way we do that is going to be what we're going to talk about today, is going to be a convergence of where we are in the Hebrew calendar, where we are in the Torah, and where we are in history. So first of all, let's talk about where we are on the Jewish calendar. We are in the month of Tevet. Month of Tevet is probably one of the months when people go to name the months. This is one they usually forget because it just doesn't seem so catchy. However, does anybody remember the very beginning of the month of Tevet? What were we doing the very beginning of the month of Tevet? What happened Rosh Chodesh Tevet, Darlene?
Oh.
Dorothy, whoever, everybody.
Well, we were celebrating Hanukkah still, is my
Exactly. We celebrated Hanukkah. So Hashem gives us a gift that the month of Tevet is starting with a bang. It's like the end of Hanukkah. So it's like almost completely illuminated. Of our Chanukiah is illuminated. We're starting with light. We celebrate Rosh Chodesh. We're singing Hallel. This is great because the month of Tevet is considered one of the dark months that is under the auspices of Esav. Under the auspices of Esau is considered one of the dark and negative months. In fact, what we learn is that what Tevet is in time is what Mitzrayim is in place. So Mitzrayim is in place and Tevet are considered equivalent. So if we want to know what is Mitzrayim, it's the month of Tevet. Tevet is considered a dark, constricted, negative month. But Hashem gives us a flashlight at the beginning of the month to say, the month is going to be dark. It's the darkest time of the year, the darkest time of the month. And we go into the month of Tevet, and I'm going to illuminate it for you with the light of the Hanukkah menorah. And at the same time, this is going to be the beginning of when we read about the going down into Egypt, and we already had that Yaakov came down with his family, etc. Yes, Beth Ann.
It's also the time when the light comes back, because if you look at it, it's really, there is that peak of darkness, but that's it. The rest of the month, we are slowly getting a little more sunlight.
You are right. We are very slowly going there. So it's like we cross the border. And when it's going to get even more pronounced is going to be when we get to Tu B'Shvat. So even though, like on the secular calendar, we see after December 21st, people saying, "Oh, it's now the days are going to get longer." Thank goodness. But there's something about Tu B'Shvat, the 15th of Shvat, which will be next month, that then that's really considered the beginning of the 3 months of Geula. It'll be Tu B'Shvat on the 15th of Shvat. It'll be Purim on the 14th of Adar. And then, not to panic anybody, but then Pesach on in 14th and 15th of Nisan. So it's going to be Geula is coming. But Beth Ann, you're exactly right that we get a little tiny hint of it. And it's like a little bit of the light from Hanukkah that's still going to illuminate and help us out. So being in Mitzrayim, says the Jewish people go down to Mitzrayim. We know Yaakov knew, everyone knew that there was the Nevuah, the prophecy that given to Abraham, your children will be strangers in a strange land and they'll be oppressed. And after 400 years, I will take them out. So everyone knew what was on tap. What do you go down with? So how do you equip yourself for that? So you equip yourself with the name of this entire Sefer, which is Shmot. I'm equipping you with your names. Your names are going to be the key to help you in the galut, in the exile, and to the geula, and to the redemption. So it starts off on the Sefer Shmot, the Sefer, the book of names, starts off on page 292, 293 in your Chumash. And it says, and these are the names of the children of Israel who were coming to Egypt. With Jacob, each man and his household came, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda, Yisachar, Zevulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And all the persons who emerged from Jacob's loins were 70 souls, and Joseph was in Egypt. Okay. What's very strange about the opening of this entire Sefer is we already know all this information. We already saw this exact same list in Parsha Vayigash. So put your little string there on where we are on page 293, and then turn back to Parsha Vayigash, and we're going to see basically the same list of people. And we're going to page 259. 259, this is Parshas Vayigash. This is when Yaakov and where they're reunited with Jacob, Joseph, all the brothers, they come down. And verse 8 on page 259. Now, these are the names of the children of Israel who were coming to Egypt. It is exactly the same words. Jacob and his children, Jacob's firstborn, and then we're just going to read the name of the tribes, not all the children, descendants. But it's Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Then verse 13 is Issachar and Zevulun. And then you go on to the next page. It's Gad and Asher. And then we see to verse 20, it says, to Joseph was born in the land of Egypt, Manasseh and Ephraim. And then verse 21, Benjamin's sons. And then verses 23, Dan. And 24 is Naphtali. So we have a whole list, exactly this list already given to us in Vayigash. And now we're told the big grand opening of the book of Shmot is, and these are the people, the names of the people coming to Egypt. It's like, again, very poor writing. If you are writing a dramatic novel, you don't start with information that you already talked about before, and now you're making such a big deal about it. So what is it that we're being told? There are 70 plus answers to this question. What we're going to look at is what I had the pleasure of learning from Shira Smiles about the meaning of, I'm sorry, that's not right, from Rabbi Moshe Wolfson from Emunat Itecha, about the names and what the names signify. Now, what we just looked at was a list of names, and I'm guessing that you probably looked at it like how I looked at it, which is, okay, yeah, I recognize those names. Everyone recognized those are the 12 tribes of Israel. Everyone saw that. Those are the names. However, what's very interesting is when the names were listed in Vayigash, they were in a different order than when they were listed just now. So in Vayigash, and you don't need to write this down, you can just hear that it's different. It goes Reuben, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. That's the same. Then it goes Yisachar, Zevulun, Gad, Asher, Menashe, Ephraim, Benjamin, Dan, and Naphtali. That's in Vayigash. Shemot goes Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zevulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And then just to really throw a monkey wrench in it, when we get to Sefer Bamidbar, which is going to talk about the encampment, it's going to go in a completely different order. So the question is, what's going on? Is it a teacher who wants to give everybody fair, we're just going to mix it up and, change the placement so that nobody feels bad? It's like, that's not the reason. The order of the names are being given to tell us what the names are going to mean for us in this new situation. In Parshas Vayigash, when we are told the names, it says the names then, the meaning of them, the way we looked at those names was from the perspective of going into Egypt and going down to Egypt and into the bondage. The names that we are given at the beginning of the book of Shemot, the book of names, is their names that's called their Geula names, their redemption names. And the names take on a completely different meaning, even though the names stay the same. Okay, so we're going to just pause for a moment to talk about the order of these names in Shemot. So let's go back to where we were, and we're going to see that even how the verses are divided up is instructive. So we're going back to page 293, and you'll notice it also doesn't make so much sense if you look at it. The names of the tribes are divided up into 3 different verses, and verses are not full sentences here. So verse 2 is Reuben, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. Verse 3 is Yisachar, Zevulun, and Benjamin. Verse 4 is Dan and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Okay, so why is that? Why are there 3 different verses? Why isn't it just one string of names? So what we are being taught here is the names that are being listed and how they're being broken up is Reuben, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda are Leah's first 4 children. She is the primary wife of Yaakov, even though he wanted to marry Rachel. They're the ones that are considered like the strong ones of the family. They are the strongest ones. At the end, let's go to verse 4. Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher, those 4 children are the children of Bilhah and Zilpah. Each of them had 2. So those are Rachel and Leah's handmaids. Those are the ones who are listed at the end. In the middle are 3. The 3 that are listed in the middle are Yisachar, Zevulun, and Benjamin. Issachar, Zevulun, and Benjamin. It says, why are those 3 in the middle? Why are those 3 put together, unlike how they were listed before? It says, this represents the framework of the Jewish people of what is at the core. What's at the core are Yisachar, Zevulun, and Benjamin. What does that mean? It says, Yisachar, the tribe of Yisachar, were the Torah teachers, the Torah scholars. We've learned about the partnership between Issachar and Zevulun. Issachar taught Torah, and Zevulun, they had shipping, and that they used their money to support Yisachar. So it was a partnership. So it says Yisachar were the Torah scholars, Zevulun were the ones that were the financial backers, and Benjamin, it was in Benjamin's territory that the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, would be built. So for example, here in Israel, I live in the section of Binyamin. We live in the Benjamin region of Israel, which is where, because we're very close to Yerushalayim, depending on traffic for us, but in the old days, it didn't depend on traffic. We're very close to be able to get to the Beit HaMikdash. So it says that from Yericho, where we are, they said that you would be able to smell the incense from the Beit HaMikdash that it carried. And given how the smell of pollution also carries, we totally believe that and can understand. So we live in the area of Benjamin. So it says this was to be a core ideal, even before they get to the land of Israel, before anything is happening. It's like, we need to know that who Yissachar, Zevulun, and Benjamin represent. That's the core of the Jewish people. They're sandwiched in between I'm going to call it the governmental leadership of the Jewish people, which are the first tribes listed, and then the sandwich, I hate to say, the bottom grouping of the handmaidens of Bilhah and Zilpah's children. There are some who also say that it represents those three of Yissachar, Zevulun, and Benjamin also represent what we're told is in Pirkei Avot, al shlosha devarim ha'olam omed, on three things the world stands, al haTorah, al ha'avodah, ve'al gemilut chasadim. And that the Torah is Yissachar, avodah, which is the Beit HaMikdash, the service in the Beit HaMikdash, is Benjamin, and gemilut chasadim, the acts of kindness, were the acts of kindness of the tribe of Zevulun for supporting his brother in his brotherly tribe of Yissachar. And so this is what the world stands on. So that even looks like a irrelevant placement of names in an order of, I'm just listing the 12 tribes, like, wait, that's not the same order you had it before. The order before was about going down to Egypt. This order in Shemot is what it's going to take to get us out. So this is what's going to get us out. It says this is the path, or the path of those names. And those names take on a different meaning when we're focused on Geula than when we are focused on redemption as opposed to exile. Now this is true. Yes, Andy, unmute and so I can hear your question. You can type it in the chat if you, okay. We'll go ahead. If you can get it off, let me know. Okay, so this is this idea of these names. It says that this is another understanding that we've probably talked about in the past, and you've heard from other people, I'm sure, that when we are born and our parents give us our Hebrew names, it says our parents are given Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration. If you chose your own Hebrew name, if you converted or your parents didn't give you one, whoever is giving your name is given divine inspiration to choose that name. And the meaning of that name, it says that that is the mission of your neshama. So the word neshama, the middle letters of neshama are the letters shin mem, which spells name, exactly. Your shame is the calling of your neshama, of your mission in this world. However, missions metamorphosize. They change, they develop, they transform depending on circumstances. And so you can have a name that means one thing at one stage of your life, because your name, I'm Chayerut, me being Chayerut when I'm in kindergarten can't possibly be the exact same thing as when I'm 69. It's going to be a variation of that theme, but it's going to be a different aspect of it. And we're actually encouraged to really explore our Hebrew names, the letters of our Hebrew names, even it says the atbash, figuring out other ways of looking at your name. Like I figured out for my name, that's Chayerut, that if you spell it backwards and forwards at the same time, it spells out Torah Chai, which was the name of my study group with Hadassah for many years. So I thought, well, that describes me kind of going here and there and all over the place. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I would be named like not a straight name. Chayerut, Torah Chai. But when I was in kindergarten, so it looked like, and now Ellen will tell us about Hanukkah, in my kindergarten class, or here's a piece of matzah, and my friends would want that. Okay, so the truth is, I'm still kind of doing that, but at a different level. But it's the same thing of the Torah is alive. That's my mission, but it's going to look different depending on what my circumstances are. And God forbid, I could be in very sad or difficult or challenging circumstances, and my mission would actually be the same. How do I bring the Torah alive in this moment? How does God come into this picture? How do I manifest that? That's my thing. So that's what I always have to figure out. And at the same time, I'll always be getting in my own way doing that. That there will be my shortcomings that are going to stand in my own way and keep me from doing that effectively. That's my Mitzrayim. I have to be able to get out of it and or use my mission to help me address my challenges as well. My personal challenges, the ones that I am born with and have, and the ones that come at me from outside as well. So the names change as far as what aspects of them are going to be relevant to the people. This Shabbos is considered to be an extremely auspicious time to be reinvigorated with the strength of your Hebrew name. It says that all names are in Parsha Shemot, because first of all, we're all descended from one of those tribes. So when they say one of the names of those tribes, that includes each and every one of us. So it'll be our tribal name, which for most Jews today is one of three tribes, either the tribe of Benjamin, the tribe of Yehuda, or the tribe of Levi. That's basically where we're coming from, because the other tribes, unfortunately, are lost for now until they all come back. So it says it's very auspicious if you have an opportunity to be in synagogue, in shul, this Shabbos, to be able to hear the reading of Shemot, even when it says Ve'ela Shemot that are coming into Mitzrayim. These are the names of your neshamas that are coming into Mitzrayim and are going to be redeemed. And we're going to use the power of our names in order to do that. In addition, many of you are probably familiar with the fact that the end of the Shemona Esrei, after we do davening, that there are in the back of a traditional Siddur, for sure in all the Art Scroll Siddurs, there's a list of verses that are designed to match up with the first and last letter of your Hebrew name. And it's considered important, which I always forget. I say these things and I'm like, oh yes, I need to do them, to say the verse for your name. That we are supposed to pray, not just for ourselves in general, but we're supposed to daven for the strength of our name to be able to help us, because it's one of our tools. It's the primary tool of who we are is our name. So if anybody between now and Shabbos wants to email me, if you don't know how to find that, or you don't have a Siddur that has that information, I'm happy to help you with the chart. There's probably something online you can also get, and there may be even multiple lists. So then someone says, well, what if you have the wrong verse? Like, what if you have something else? It says, there's really no such thing as the wrong verse. If there is a verse that begins with the first letter of your name and ends with the last letter of your name, that's good, because it all comes from Tanakh. It all comes from the Torah, from the prophets, or from the writing. So it's all good. So I have a bracelet also that has it. So I need a lot of props in my life. So I wear that to kind of remind me about what I'm supposed to be doing. Does anybody have any questions at all just about this part here yet? At all? Okay.
Ellen, what page in the
Yes.
Siddur, what page in the Siddur are the names on?
So Rhoda, what I have is the Women's Siddur. I don't know if you have the Art Scroll Women's Siddur, but it's on page 912.
Is it in the regular Art Scroll Siddur? Or also?
Yes,
Okay.
it's also in the regular Art Scroll Siddur, but it's a slightly different page. I'm not sure, but it's in the back. It's in the back of the Siddur. Yeah. But if you have the Women's Siddur, it's on page 912.
No, I don't.
But if you have a different Art Scroll Siddur, it may be on a different page. But for sure, it's in the back. It's after the amelioration of a bad dream. It has the things for your name. So This is a very auspicious time to, again, focus. It says this parsha specifically, that we're all in Mitzrayim and we're spending our entire lives leaving different levels of it and coming to more and more refined levels of redemption. And that's what we're looking to do. And being focused on our names is considered a very powerful way to help us, to help ourselves. Hold on one second. You would think that people in Israel or people who go by their Hebrew names wouldn't necessarily need to think about this so much because they're always called by their Hebrew names. But it's easy to get distracted and forget. In fact, one of the main ideas about reciting this, it's like, can you imagine at the beginning of your day if you said, okay, my name is Marjorie Kaplan. I just want to remember that. You think, are you having a senior? I mean, we may have senior moments, but it usually doesn't get that bad if I got to remember my name. However, it says when it comes to our Hebrew names, we do forget. And these verses are meant especially to remind us of our names, mostly because our name is our mission. And we get very sidetracked on what our missions are in this world. And so we have to remind ourselves, and this is considered a wake-up call for the neshama, is the beginning of Sefer Shmot. Etta.
In my siddur, which is a black cover,
Art scroll.
old Ashkenaz, I think it's Ashkenaz, Masorah. It's on page 924. It comes right after the 4 parshayot at the end, and right before the Torah readings in Hebrew.
Yeah,
So
Okay, great.
I found it.
Okay, good. Thank you, Etta. For sure, it's at the back, and you can also go to your table of contents at the beginning of your siddur, and it will show you. It should be listed there as of the verses for names, so that you have it. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to awaken our neshamas, which is why, again, the names are being called out at the beginning of this sefer, because as we said, we just talked about this in Parsha Vayigash. And now we're saying it all again. Why are we saying it again? We're saying it again because we're saying, we're in galut, we're in exile. I'm waking you up. I'm waking you up. These are the names. And you notice that it's in the present tense. So go back to page 293. And it says, and these are the names of the children of Israel who were coming to Egypt. In the present tense, it really isn't who were coming. It says habaim, who are coming. It's like, here comes the cavalry. Here comes the names of the people who are coming down to get you out, who are coming to redeem you. These are the names habaim. It just doesn't make so much sense because they already came 2 parshas ago. So it doesn't make sense if you're looking at it from a logistics perspective. It makes sense if we're saying these names are now coming in a new dimension to provide new strength for the Jewish people as they are going through the exile and then to be prepared to be redeemed. And what do we know when we say that there's a couple different lists when it talks about in the merit of what were the Jewish people redeemed from Egypt? And it talks about they did not change their clothing, and it says, and they did not change their names. Okay, so they did not change their names, meaning they did not lose focus on who they really were. Now, there are degrees, because we also know the Jewish people reached the 49th level of spiritual impurity. So some of us were like hanging on to our names by a thread, but it's like, I still remember who I am. And people will tell your parents will just remember who you are. Remember the family you come from. Remember, what you're supposed to be doing. And we're like, yeah, like how can I forget? It's like, I easily can forget. All of us can easily forget. The Jewish people were going into a time of tremendous pressure, tremendous, oppression and all of that. And it's very easy to let go of all of that, and they didn't. They came out with, they went in with Hebrew names, and they came out with Hebrew names, which is very interesting because all you have to do is look around at those of us who are sitting here right now. And most of us are not sitting here showing our Hebrew names, and myself included. Though I have to say I struggle with this because my Hebrew name is Chaya. And when I say, when you say, what's your name? Hashem, and I say Ellen, they go, Ma, so, which means what? So like, they're not ever really sure what to do with that. So, but there are a lot of people who have different names here, but obviously we're all sitting here. Bethan, you're there because that's a good Hebrew name. Etta, you're good there. Miriam. So we've got some people here who are on the path, but that's usually the first thing that goes, because what did the Jewish people do who immigrated to the United States when they wanted to make it in the world? What's the first thing they did? They changed their names. It's like, I want to fit in. I want to fit in. So to hang on to your name is an act of courage in a milieu that is going to be discriminatory, but it is also an act of salvation, because hanging on to our name means hanging on ultimately to our mission. So the Jewish people are doing that. This is happening in the month of Tevet. The month of Tevet, as we said, even though, as Beth Ann said, there is some light coming in, the truth is the last week of the month of Tevet, the last 2 weeks of the month of Tevet are considered especially hard. Last week, we had the fast of the 10th of Tevet, beginning of the destruction process of the Beit HaMikdash. So it's a very challenging time.
I have a question.
Yes, Miriam.
I apologize. For people like me who were Johnny-come-latelys, shall we say, I had to choose my own name.
Right.
And the Rosh of my Beit Din required it to be a biblical name.
Yes.
Okay. Rabbi First in Chicago.
Yes.
So it was a search. So it was a name that I chose that I felt I had personality attributes, or maybe not attributes, but a personality similar to Miriam.
Right.
She got in her little trouble. She was good. She worked hard. She looked after her baby brother, and right.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I don't know. That's kind of the story of my life. I'm kind of in and out. Right. But I'm in 100%, of course, with the Jewish world. But when you've chosen your own name.
Same thing applies. The same thing applies, Miriam.
Okay.
Absolutely. You were given Ruach HaKodesh. Out of all the names that are there, you could have picked a number of there's a lot of names.
Yes.
Now, obviously, there are names that people tend to pick and names that people don't tend to pick, but names resonate with people. And if you picked your own name, you were given the same Ruach HaKodesh that your parents would have given, have they given you a Hebrew name, had that been the appropriate thing to do at that time. So you parented yourself and were given that same insight. So when we do that, this is a huge thing, and especially for those of us who don't go by our Hebrew names, is to connect with it, especially this Shabbos. So there's something else that is also going on here, and then we're going to get to the burning bush. The other thing that is going on is that beginning with the book, with Sefer Shemot, the parsha of Shemot, we are in a period of weeks that are called Shovavim. So now for that, what I'd like you to do is turn to the very beginning of your Chumash, to the table of contents that lists the names of the parshas. And we're going to go to where on the left-hand column where it has where it says Sefer Shemot, Shemot Exodus. What we're going to see is the listing of the first 6 parshas in the book of Shemot. It goes Shemot, Va'era, Bo, Bishalach, Yitro, and Mishpatim. Those are the first parshas in the book of Shemot. If you take the first letter of each of those words of those names of those parshas, you'll get the Shin for Shemot, the Vav for Va'era, the Bet for Bo, the Bet for Bishalach, the Yud for Yitro, and the Mem for Mishpatim. It spells the word Shovavim. The word Shovavim means like mischief makers. Mischief makers. And the phrase comes from the prophet Jeremiah. The prophet Yirmiyahu, who says, quoting Hashem, saying, Shuvu banim shovavim, return my mischief-making children, my wayward children. Now, when we usually think about doing teshuvah, about returning and getting ourselves back on track, we tend to think of like, I'm going to make myself into a tzaddik or a tzaddikus, a righteous person. Like, who does God want to have come back into the fold? Righteous people. That's what I'm going to work on, before Rosh Hashanah and all these things. That's what I'm going to do. I love this because who is it that Hashem wants to come back? Come back, you mischievous children. And it's not to be punished. It's come back, you mischievous children. You're my children. And it's more like this is the love that Hashem has for each and every one of us. It's like, come back. I want you to stop doing damage to yourselves, but it's not a prerequisite for coming back to me. Just come back, and then we'll talk about your therapy afterwards, but just come back. So we see starting in Shemot, it's like your mom is calling, I'm calling you. It's like, I don't care that you're coming home and you're covered with mud and you crashed the car, whatever it is you did to yourself. I don't care. I just want you home. So come back, come back. So these 6 weeks long to what are called Shovavim. Now, the truth is in some circles, these weeks are treated very, very seriously. People will fast. They take on all sorts of things to try to correct the problems because it is a time of teshuvah. But I'm really struck by the idea that Hashem wants us warts and all. I love that idea. Come back, my wayward children. I'm not looking for perfection. Just come back. And these opening parshas talk about how that process is going to happen. Because again, who are we comparing ourselves to? We're talking about the Jewish people who are at the 49th level of spiritual impurity. So much that we know, it says in the Midrash, that when we get to the splitting of the sea, that the angels say the Egyptians are worshiping idols and then they're worshiping idols. Why should we split for them? They're like not so much better than them. Like, why should we do anything special for these people? And God is like, these are my people. These are my people. So I love that. It's the ultimate outreach of like, just come in. So we are at the beginning of Shovavim, which is just come back, hear your name echoing through the centuries, connect to our mission, come back to who we are meant to be. So all of this is happening at this time, the beginning of this parsha, the beginning of these 6 weeks all together are all addressing kind of a similar theme. And then we're going to talk about the final section, which is Moshe at the burning bush. Now, one of the aspects of burning bush is you could probably interview people from, I don't know, people who really don't know too much about anything Jewishly. And I'm guessing that the burning bush is probably one of those things that most people know about. People have heard of the burning bush, right? So what's interesting about the burning bush is, where did that happen? Where was that? Because that's the part that I think sometimes gets overlooked. So let's take a look on page 303. I'm sorry, page 301. Chapter 3, verse 1. Moshe has had to leave Egypt because he killed the Egyptian taskmaster, and it became known, and there was a bounty on his head, so he escapes. He goes to Midian. He ends up marrying Zipporah, and he's pasturing flock for his father-in-law, Yitro. So chapter 3, verse 1, Moshe was shepherding the sheep of Yitro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. He guided the sheep far into the wilderness, and he arrived where? At the mountain of God, toward Horeb. Where was he? He was at Mount Sinai. we kind of forget that part of it. The Moshe's call to service, call to action, is talk about starting at the end and working your way back. He's starting at like where is this story going to finish here? Not totally finished, but where's it going? You're standing here. Can you imagine that? That idea of, I'm going to take you to where this ends up, but now I have to set you back to the beginning, and you still have to go through all the steps. So the truth is, how much does that help? If you know and you see, this is like the end, here's where we're going to end up, but I still need to go through the whole process. So we were actually told that before we come into this world, that Hashem shows our neshama like what it's going to be, like where we're going, and we agree to it. And then we come down into the world to live it. And we agree to it. So I think that's fascinating, because sometimes I think about, I'm sure many of you have had the situation when you're going through something, it's like, I agreed to this. I signed up for this mission. I signed up for this. And people will say that I didn't sign up for this. It's like, oh yeah, actually you did. So I signed up for this, but I'm going to go through it, but I'm not going to be the same person once I go through. So even though on paper it looks like Moshe's making a big circle, he's starting at Mount Sinai, he's going to Egypt, and he's going to come back with the Jewish people to Mount Sinai. Is he the same person when he comes back? He is not the same person. He is not the same person. What changes him? The journey along the way. And that's what he gets to experience and start at the burning bush. So he starts off seeing something that is an impossibility. It's a physical impossibility of seeing a bush that is burning but is not consumed. He's like, I have to take a look at this. So what happens is he stops to look. Is this a big deal to stop and look? Let's take a look at this here. Verse 2. An angel of God appeared to him in a blaze of fire from amid the bush. Moshe saw, and behold, the bush was burning in the fire, but the bush was not consumed. Moses thought, I will turn aside now and look at this great sight. Why will the bush not be burned? First of all, I just want to say, even though verse 3 says Moses thought, if you look in the Hebrew for verse 3, it's the last word on the line that starts with a gimel in the Hebrew. It doesn't say Moshe thought. It says Vayomer Moshe, and Moshe said. So the question is, who is he talking to? So the reason it's translated as thought is because he was talking to himself out loud. He was talking to himself. But isn't his question his statement a little weird? I will turn aside now and look at this great sight. Why will the bush not be burned? If you saw a bush burning and not being consumed, would you make that kind of statement? I will now turn aside to see this great sight. Is there something a little strange about that? Being worded in that way? I'd be like, oh my gosh, look at that. It's a bush, and what is that? Right? My comment is curiosity. Wow, that's rubbernecking. Wow, what's going on over there? Like, I see something, that's weird. What's happening? Moshe's statement wasn't, wow, what is that? That's so weird. His comment was, he said to himself, I will turn aside now and look at this great sight. Why will the bush not be burned? This is the question of reflection, contemplation, exploration. It's above and beyond curiosity. We, and I'm going to speak for myself, sometimes confuse curiosity and contemplation and reflection. This happens when we're on our phones and a link comes up. It's like, oh, that sounds interesting. I'm going to go click on that. Clicking on something is curiosity. I said, well, I might learn something interesting. Yeah, that's true. And what do you do with that thing that you learn? Well, if you're like me, you forward it to a few friends and then you go on to click to the next thing. It's like Moshe wasn't clicking on it. He was making a conscious decision to explore it. And he said to himself, I will turn aside now and look at this great sight. Why will the bush not be burned? So he had a question and he wanted to understand and he wanted to know what the message was because it was clearly a miraculous sight. What does this mean? It means that Moshe had in him the ability to observe and pay attention to what was happening around him. According to the number of the Midrashim, it says the bush had been burning and nobody else turned aside. And you think, well, how could that possibly be? It's like, we're so distracted. It says it's amazing we see anything. In Israel, the traffic laws are such that if there is a crosswalk, the pedestrians have the right of way, which is the scariest thing in the world because people are just cross. And what are most people doing as they cross? They aren't even looking. They're walking across, looking at their phones. They're not even paying attention if the drivers are even stopping because everybody is looking down. They've done all these things, these studies about the posture, the brain, all these things. It's like, not only aren't we seeing a burning bush, we're not seeing any bushes. We're not seeing anything. It says we are so like this that we can't contemplate anything. We're busy, we're distracted, and we're curious. We're definitely curious. We want to know what's happening, but it's not to find out, and what does this mean? What does God want from me? What is the impact of this on my life? Is this a metaphor for something I should be doing? If we would ask those questions when we see whatever we see, that would be fine. And that would actually be part of our mission and following our path to figure out what we're supposed to accomplish in this world. Curiosity, what did I say? Curiosity killed the cat. Curiosity is not the same thing as contemplation. What they say, they've talked about it gives a rush of dopamine, which then fuels the next thing, but it's not the same thing as contemplation. Moshe was contemplating, what does this mean? And what it means was that the Jewish people would never be destroyed. They would be burned, they would be hurt, but they would never be destroyed. Now, who told Moshe that? I don't remember reading that. There wasn't in there. It says that's what Moshe derived from seeing that. Why did he derive that? Remember how he went out to save the Jew and killed the Egyptian back in Egypt, and then he had to leave? It said that for the whole time he was gone, those 40 years until he goes back to Egypt as an 80-year-old man, the entire 40 years he was worried about the Jewish people. The entire time he was worried about them. Which means that his perspective and his framework and frame of reference was about the Jewish people. So when he sees a sight like the burning bush, his frame of reference is this has something to do with the Jewish people. Somebody else who saw it might have thought this has to do with, I don't know what, some other thing, whatever's on their mind. We could really say that all of life is a Rorschach test. That there's all sorts of things out there, and how are we going to understand what it means, should we even take the time to ask ourselves what it means, is going to be based on what our perspective is, what our frame of reference is, and how we understand who we are in this world. So it's interesting that this Hebrew letter for the month of Tevet is the letter Ayin, which means eye. So how do we get through the month of Tevet, this challenging time? It's through our Ayin Tova, our good eye, of being able to look around and see things and interpret. So it was Shira Smiles who spoke about this, about the burning bush, and she was very funny. She said that she took a class in psychology many, many, many years ago, and they had like a Rorschach test, and the psychology teacher held up like this blob of ink and asked the class, like, what does this look like? And the first guy said, it looks like a bunch of mice running through an apartment in New York. She's like, what? She goes, it looks like Shabbos candles on the table waiting to be lit. She's like, what are you even talking about? Mice running around an apartment. It's like, his experience was mice in an apartment. I see Shabbos candles. So when we were kids, we used to have a lot of fun. We would take out towels and lie in our backyard and look at clouds. And then everyone would say what the clouds looked like. And sometimes you could see what the other person saw. And sometimes you're like, I don't see that at all. But the truth is that the whole world is like that. All of the experiences we have, the people who are coming into our life, the situations that confront us, the challenges that unnerve us, all of these things are really Rorschach tests. It's like, what does it mean to you? Because it's not going to be, somebody else can't really tell you what it means to you. So someone said, well, what if you come to the wrong conclusion? It says, you can't come to the wrong conclusion. As long as it's not something that is illegal, immoral, or unethical, the conclusion is going to be whatever is in your frame of reference is how you're going to interpret it. Marjorie.
Ellen, could you talk a bit about the role of optimism? Because Moses could have had a whole different interpretation, but it was a very optimistic one.
Was that optimistic? It was very optimistic. And then when the angel comes and God says, Ehyeh asher ehyeh, I will be who I will be, and I will go down with you. I will be with you in your suffering. It could have been, so he had to be optimistic because the bush wasn't destroyed. It wasn't destroyed. Now, that being said, you could say, well, there's a lot of pain and suffering in that burning. So when Shira Smiles was talking about it, she was saying, until a few years ago, we might not have been able to exactly relate. We hear stories about the Inquisition and pogroms and like things and the burnings or whatever, but it's, we're still smelling the smoke. They can burn us. We have been burned and we have been hurt and we have been killed, but we have not been destroyed. Because another verse in the parsha, which is, the more they afflicted us, the more we grew, the stronger we got, defying all logic. So I heard Sivan Rachav Meir speak, and she said, if I understood her correctly, that 90% of the population from the Gaza envelope, area of destruction from October 7th, has returned to their homes, 90%, plus 3,000 additional people. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not so normal. That's not like what most people do. Most people are like, you know what, I'm never going back there. This is like, oh, yes, we are. And in fact, we're getting married, we're getting engaged, we're having babies, we're rebuilding, we're expanding. And it's just like wherever they press us, it's almost like an automatic response that that's where we're going to flourish. You'd think our enemies would figure this out, that the more they press us, and it is the place of optimism. However, it's a heavy burden. It's heavy, but it comes with both. And that's the reality of the Jewish experience. So this becomes Shemot. Does that answer your question, Marjorie? Like to address it? So this really becomes so we see that Sefer Shemot becomes a map. It's like our treasure map, like our ways. How do we navigate this? It's like, well, first of all, you need to know your name. And I think throughout the war, we've talked a number of times how the names of the hostages who were released somehow were exactly, Sachs says it comes from Yaakov, absolutely, in the battle with the angel, for sure. Yeah. And all of these things, this is like whatever it is. And Yaakov also, when he figured out when Lavan was cheating him with the sheep and the goats and everything else, and God made it so he flourishes. So it's not because we're so clever. So we just have to keep that in mind. It's because Hashem is with us. Because when Hashem says, I am with you, I will be with you. This place is holy, and and I'm going to be with you. So verse on page 303, verse 12, and he said, for I shall be with you, and this is your sign that I have sent you. So the truth is the fact that Hashem is with us, that we are able to endure, and he has given us strength. He gives us strength through many different avenues, but one of the most powerful ones that we're supposed to connect to is the power of our name. Moshe's name in and of itself is an example of this. His name is Moshe, and Hashem calls to him Moshe, Moshe. Moshe, we know, is the name that Pharaoh's daughter gave him. From the water I have drawn him, because that's what the word means, is to draw forth. But Moshe becomes the one who is a drawer forther. He's the one who draws forth the Jewish people from Egypt, draws forth Torah, min hashamayim, from heaven, to give to the Jewish people. He's the one who draws forth the peoplehoodness of the Jewish people to be able to allow them to be a nation. So obviously, what his name meant to Bat Paro, Pharaoh's daughter, when he was born, blossoms, matures, changes, and evolves through his life, as each one of us does as well. Our challenge is to not plateau and not think that our name, I reached my full expression of my name and now I'm kind of done. There's no retirement package in Jewish life. There's no retirement package for the development of the neshama. It is ongoing, ongrowing, and connecting to our name at every stage of our life is our ticket to be able to go from galut, from exile, to geula, so that when we come to our final at 120, as Moshe did, is like, we come because we know he never gets into the land of Israel. And yet, he is considered, that's the ultimate, we should live to 120, like Moshe Rabbeinu, like Moshe, our teacher, and that we return ourselves, just like Moshe. He started off at Mount Sinai, and he comes back to Mount Sinai, but he is not the same person. And God willing, neither are we. We have reached a place where the challenges and everything that we have gone through in each of our steps along the way has allowed us to make our names great. That was the original promise that Hashem gave to Abraham. I will make your name great. It's like, what does that mean? You'll be famous. You'll have followers, influencers. What does that mean? You'll have sponsors. It's like, I will make your name great means great, gadol. I will make you expansive. Your name will become fully manifested in this world. And that's our goal, is to fully manifest ourselves. That's called leaving Egypt and reaching redemption. So give us all a bracha that we should, number one, know our names, remember our names, live our names, draw strength from our names, and be able to manifest who we are and why we are in this world. Some people think it's something that's like someone says, well, what's my mission? So your mission presents itself every day, every minute, in what experiences are brought to you. The challenge, the child, the friend, the community, the whatever it might be, that's the mission, is to encounter that mission through the lens, through the perspective, so that hopefully you see candles waiting to be lit and not mice running through an apartment in New York. And that we'll be able to have a perspective that allows us to see the hopeful, redemptive aspect of whatever we experience. As Miriam did when she saw the Pharaoh's daughter drawing her brother out, instead of panicking, she waits to see, kind of like the Moshe thing, I will now turn and see, what does this mean? And she says to Bat Paro, do you need a wet nurse for this baby? And she doesn't panic. She doesn't freak out. She contemplates. She's not curious. She contemplates. She thinks. She chooses to engage. God willing, we will be able to do that, and we will reach the final geula for all of Am Yisrael, each one of us contributing our part to it. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you. This is
Thank you.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Great.
Thank you, Ellen.
Great to see you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.